there is not a constitutionally established percentage for a deviation. The cases have varied, and actually the court has come out pretty strongly and said that they're not going to set a standard percentage when it comes to deviations. They're going to look at the totality of the circumstances involved in the situation. That is a little bit different if you're looking at some of the statewide congressional and House districts. There's a lot more discussion within the courts about percentages in those particular situations. The only constitutional mandate, of course, is one person, one vote. And that has been determined as much as practicable is the term that the Supreme Court has chosen to use in defining what is one person, one vote.
So to summarize, it's not really a set standard percentage, but that was the term Laura used, practical? Or?
As close as practicable.
Close as practicable. Okay, good. And that would kind of lead into my real question, if I can, Mr. Chairman, real quickly. It seems like since there's not really a set number, that we need to anticipate any growth changes that will happen in Arkansas in the next 10 years before the next one, make sure representation is as close as possible. And it seems pretty easy that the Northwest Arkansas, Central Arkansas region, talking about the 2nd and 3rd district, are going to have exponential growth, while the likely trends show South Arkansas and East Arkansas continue on population decline. So I think any map that we do needs to reflect that deviation more in those districts than they do the other ones as future population growth. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator. Any other questions for BLR while we're at the table before? Senator Clark, correct me.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just curious about the deviation to follow up on Senator Garner from 10 years ago. I don't know if y'all have that information with you now, but if it was 25.2 in one district and 25.4 in another, I'm curious what those deviations were. Maybe not just for that one example, but the last couple of times.
I'm sorry, Senator. Matthew Miller with BLR. The last map, it was very, very, very low. Like in between two of the counties, it was 20, and between two, it was 200. I think the percentages were like 0.01, 0.001. That was a result of splitting precincts, splitting counties. Obviously, you can drive it down lower if you're doing that. If you're not splitting counties, there's only a certain variation you're going to be able to work with, and the courts have recognized that before, that if that's a criteria that's important to you, that it's only going to be within a certain range. So again, it's very fact-driven, very criteria-driven as to what the entity doing the reapportionment is trying to accomplish.
So 10 years ago, what you're saying is that deviations were 0.01, 0.001%. I understand that.
Very, very, very small, yes, sir.
For either you or Michelle, I understand that there's no hard or fast right line number, but other cases the Supreme Court has approved, if there's up to 1% deviation, or do we have examples from the Supreme Court or other courts where some deviations have been approved from a constitutional perspective?
I'll be happy to get those specifics. I hate to speak. I know that there's a lot of cases. I know that there was a case that I cannot recall if it was a congressional line or if it was actually within a state House of Representatives, and it was as low as 0.37, and it was disapproved because of the surrounding factors. So there are a lot of variation in these cases both ways, but the part that has really stuck out is that they refused to give us that bright line. You have heard 1% in several cases talking about congressional districts at one time, but again, the more recent case said they refused to make that bright line determination.
Thank you all very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any further questions from committee members for BLR while we're at the table at this time? Seeing none, Representative Speaks, thank you for allowing us to do that during your presentation. I appreciate it. Did you say you're ready for questions?
Yes.